All right, in this episode, we're going to talk about the art of brutal accountability and why your business is stuck, and more importantly, how to fix it, because that'd be kind of helpful, right? So let's get one thing straight before we get into this. Well, two things straight. I'm probably going to get incredibly heated because I'm incredibly passionate about this topic. But beyond that, I think we need to get it straight that if you want to build a business that gives you freedom, which I think is the point of being self-employed in the first place, you need to be damn fucking good at what you do. And I think that involves you being a master of your craft when it comes to coaching so that clients stay longer and get great results and refer more people. I think you need to be great at marketing so people actually want to work with you. And I think you need to be great at sales because without that, you're not going to sign people up. So if we agree you need to be good at coaching, marketing, and sales, I think that probably goes without saying. Because without those things, you won't sign clients, you won't keep clients, and ultimately you won't grow. And remember, that's what I sell. Like, that's the whole point in this business, is to teach you to be better at coaching, better at marketing, and better at sales. That's what I teach, right? But here's where most coaches go wrong. They don't ever get a chance to use those skills properly because they never learn how to work hard first. Like, I've been talking this morning on my Instagram story about the schooling system and how my son's given so much homework. And it got me chatting to a lot of friends about working hard, working long. Like, are they the same thing? What's the difference? So I think there is a big difference between working long hours, working lots, and working hard when you're working. And you need to know what that looks like. I think working hard is a requirement of being self-employed. Like I said to Sarah, we were sat in Barburrito, of all places. I know you're a big fan, Chaz, Barburrito. Shout out Barburrito, they sponsored this episode. They don't know they did, but I'm making them the sponsor. And the guy that served her, it was like he couldn't be fucking arsed. He was just there and he was just throwing shit at the bowl. The guy that I got was the manager, I'm assuming from his shirt, and he was absolutely loving the process. He was bantering with me, took time to ask questions and make it well. And I said to Sarah, I was like, see, if I worked here, I would, every single fucking one I made, I'd try to make it the best fucking burrito I ever made in my life. Like, when I worked in the supermarket, we had to face up at the end of the night, which is, if you don't work in the supermarket, you have to turn everything and make so that the label's pointing out and make sure that everything looks full, even if it's not. Pull it all to the front. I took great pride in doing that incredibly well because I identify as the sort of person that works hard and does his best work all the time, not necessarily because I enjoy what I'm doing, but because I enjoy doing anything I'm doing well. So I think working hard is always required. I don't think there's any real exceptions to that. But I think working long hours is optional and it's sometimes necessary. Like, there's no getting away from that. There will be requirements in your business and there will be times in your business where you do have to work longer hours. I don't always think it's necessary though. And the trick is, if you learn how to work hard and you learn how to work efficiently when you are working hard, you'll need less time to get the same results or even better results if you do it right. But if you're sloppy, you're unfocused and you're half-assed and you're working half days, then you'll never feel like you're moving forward, but you will also always feel like you were busy. And that's what I'm aiming to fix here in this episode. So it also reminded me, when I was making my notes for this, that there's a cool clip from Gary Vee that I saw recently that I really like. And I think he basically calls people out thinking that they're burnt out and working too hard when really they're not. And rather than me telling you what he said, I'll get Chaz to do his magic and then he'll put it in the episode now.
Don't let the fucking world sell you on this burnt out shit. Burnt out is different than took a gut punch, getting back up slowly. This is the problem with everyone in today's society pushing on the kids. You're burnt out. I hate that because I believe in fucking Gen Z and Gen Alpha the most, but what they have, and I feel bad for them, they've bought into this bullshit. You're a fucking go-getter and ambitious and a winner, but this fucking society has fucking sold you on how do I deal with burnt out. It's not burnt out. You fucking took a micro L. I don't know, you got punched in the face, you chipped a tooth, you got a little blood, you're gonna stop bleeding, you're gonna fix your tooth, and you're gonna go back out there. Stop listening to the fucking bullshit of society trying to tell you you're burnt out. You're not fucking burnt out.
So this is exactly what I mean. Most coaches think they're working hard, they're not. I think that's genuinely my feeling, is most coaches come to me thinking they're working hard, but they're not working as hard as they could. Most coaches think they're grinding, but I think a lot of coaches just think they're wasting time. And if you're stuck at 2 to 3K months, then this ultimately is why. So let's dig into the truth behind work ethic and why it's not just hustle culture. Before you roll your eyes though and think, oh fucking hell, here's another guy talking about just telling me grind harder, brothers. It's not like that. Whilst I'm not necessarily against that, I don't think it's the solution in its own right. So let's talk about exactly why that is. The very first thing I think we need to address in working harder and working more efficiently is like constraints, because like everyone has constraints. So coaches will come to me and be like, well, Matt, I can't do more because X. I can't do more because Y. And they're fine. Like, that's great. You're entitled to have them. Everyone has different ones. But I think we can split constraints into two different camps. We can have hard constraints and we can have soft constraints. So hard constraints are the ones you have to work around. They are what they are. I have a child. Because I have a child, I have to take that child to school. Like, fine. There's childcare, there's schooling, there's supporting your partner or your family, there's health issues, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can't do anything about. They are just hard fixed constraints. And then you've got soft constraints, which you can actually easily change. Oftentimes it's just asking you to change things that you don't fancy changing. So scrolling on Instagram for inspiration, instead of working, that's a soft constraint. Spending 3 hours in the gym, when in reality 90 minutes would have been absolutely adequate. Or telling yourself, like, I work best at night, and then every night you sit on YouTube or Netflix and binge that rather than working. Well, these are soft constraints that you're creating for yourself that you can easily change. The key isn't necessarily just working more, it's about getting more out of the time that you have, because everyone has a fixed amount of time. The better you are at working hard and working hard on the right things, then the faster your business grows, in my opinion. And it's that fucking basic. I do genuinely believe that. And what I talk about is like why working hard and work compounds over time. So one of my clients not that long ago told me he can only work 3 days instead of 5. And they were hard constraints. We couldn't do anything about them. Childcare, various other reasons meant that he had a 3-day week. The very first thing that myself and one of the coaches that works in Optimized Coach were talking to him about was the very first thing he has to get rid of in order to work hard is that, well, if only I had 5 days. You don't. Like, the if only sentence doesn't help. Okay, we have 3 days. The very first thing I asked him to do was go away and do a time study so that we know exactly how he's spending the 3 days he's working, because when you have less time, the requirement for you to be more efficient with that less time is even higher. So he told me he could work 3 days rather than 5. So that's a 40% reduction in his overall working week based on the norm, right? Logically, the conversation that we had, the assumption he was making was that it would just take him 40% longer to grow his business, which isn't a great feeling, but unfortunately it's not how it works, and it's actually a little bit worse than that until we fix it. Because when you work less, you improve slower. So here's what actually happens. If you work 5 days a week, let's say that in that 5 days, for the sake of our example just now, your skill level triples in a year at any defined domain that you are working on. So if you work 5 days a week on becoming a better coach, let's say for the sake of the example, your skill level in becoming a better coach triples in 1 year. If you work 3 days a week, your skill level barely doubles. When you look at you can actually do this as like actual numbers and real studies, but for the sake of the example, for making this easy for you to consume, 5 days a week, you'll triple. 3 days a week, you'll barely double. Now, imagine that played out over 2 years. The 5-day coach gets 10 times better than when they started, but the 3-day coach is only 4 times better. So you can see how the guy working harder, longer, and more efficiently, he runs away and leaves the other guy for dead. So that means that if you work less, you don't just take longer to grow, you fall further and further behind. So before you tell yourself, but I work smart, not hard, let's just be real with each other. And I think working smart requires doing the fucking work. It's very easy to tell yourself you're working on the right things, but I know for years, I'm someone that I think works incredibly hard, but I know I've spent days, weeks, months, years working on the wrong stuff. And oftentimes when coaches come to us in the Optimized Coach, our clients, they come to us and they say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Here's the problem. Here's what I propose we do. They're proposing to put work in the completely wrong area. And I think that's very, very dangerous. So let's dig into how specifically I propose that you work harder, but how do you work harder without wasting time, as I've just mentioned, and without burning out? Because listen, as much as I fucking hate the term burnout, call it what you want. I don't think coaches are at risk of burning out. I have worked hellish hours. I've worked incredibly hard. I've been up at 3:30 for mentorship calls with my mentor because he's in another time zone. All sorts of shit. But I've never felt burnt out. I felt tired, I felt stressed, I felt like I need a break, but I think the way you define it to yourself is very important. So how do you actually learn to work harder and to get more out of every hour? Because if you can get more out of every hour, then we've done our job here today and you can go and get more done. So I think the very first thing I recommend that you do is time blocking, because I'll do it later is a lie. I can't remember this exact quote, but a mentor of mine wrote down, it's like ADHD people have 2 time zones, right now and never. I think that's true. Even if you're not ADHD, I think that is the case for most people. I'm either doing it now or it's never going to happen. It just doesn't exist in my head. So when it comes to time blocking, I need you to stop winging your work days. I need you to set hard work hours, just like you would for a client session. So example, right? You could work 8 till 11 on sales and client work. You could then work 11 till 12 on content. 12 till 1 could be a break. 1 till 3 was coaching and program design. And then 3 till 4 is calls and messages. No multitasking, no half workings while scrolling Instagram. And I think like this is where one of the biggest problems comes in when you don't time block and you take big chunks of time and dedicate them to individual tasks. Is I always use the example of a barcode to our coaches. Is if you're doing like, you're replying to a client message and then you're going to do a bit of programming and then you're going to make an Instagram post and then you're going to jump on a sales call and then you're going to do some DMing on Instagram and then you're going to do a little bit more client messages, and it's chop, change, chop, change, chop, change. What we've got at play is something called attention residue. So with each task that you do, if you start the day at 100% of available attention, task 1 was to message a client, you then move to programming. You leave, say an invisible 5%, for the sake of the analogy, on the previous task. So every shift, you drop 5%. So you only have 95% possible attention that you can pay attention to the secondary task, and then 90 at the next, and then 85 at the next, and so on and so forth, which is part of the reason why you're feeling so stressed. Is as coaches, we have to wear a lot of hats. We can all agree that much. The problem isn't the number of hats you're wearing. The problem is the number of times you change hat in any given day. So for me, there's a training inside the Optimized Coach called the Micro Day Advantage, which I think is one of the unsung heroes that doesn't get the credit it deserves just because people watch it and forget about it because they're doing it. Is I like to split my day, each working day, let's just say we have 9 till 5, I like to split those days into 4 chunks, 4 days. So we've got early morning, late morning, early afternoon, late afternoon. And I like to time block specific tasks to those things. So there's like 4 hat changes in a day. That's enough, in my opinion, for most business owners. And if you can do that, where it's like you are literally going to do client messages and check-ins in the first block, and in the second one, you're going to do programming. Imagine you just had like that big block on programming, how much you would get done rather than doing this person's check-in, this person's programming, message a few people, this person's check-in, this person's programming, message people, change. That's where a lot of the stress comes from. So I think the second you start randomly reacting to messages and tasks, your productivity just fucking dies. So if you are worrying and wondering where your time is going, the very first exercise, as I said with our client, I would recommend you do is a time study. You're going to hate this, and if you've worked in corporate, you'll be familiar with the timesheet. I used to work in corporate, and when I worked in corporate, I had to fill in a timesheet which allocated 15 minutes increments of every work day to a specific task. And if you do that, where you go 9 to 9:15, 9:15 to 9:30, so on and so forth throughout the whole day, and you write down what you did, you will see how many times you were changing hat. And if you use some highlighters, you can then kind of color code the basic buckets of tasks. So it could be client delivery, it could be content, it could be DMing, it could be wasted time. And you highlight them in colors. You will see quite quickly that you have colors spread out across the day rather than a big block of red, a big block of blue, so on and so forth. I would recommend you do a 2-week study. That'll give you a great insight into what you're currently spending your time on. The second thing is to cut out the noise, quite literally. Like, I am happy to admit, one of the things I'm a very distractible individual for my entire life. School, education throughout actually, into corporate, PT, everything. I've always been very distractible. And it took me a long number of years to figure out that actually one of the things that fucked me up the most and distracted me the highest was sound. Again, we've been recording all morning, and actually at one point, Chaz, I know Chaz noticed it, there was this weird noise that came from the cupboard. Who knows what that was? There's someone in there, bro. There was a weird noise that came from the cupboard, and I lost my train of thought. And it may not be evident on the actual video, but I definitely did. So I think I used to get distracted by every little sound, notifications, people walking around, random noises, but now I've worked out for me the optimal way for me to have my office. And it's not limited to just sound. That's just the example I chose to use is when I'm working at my desk, I have a dark office. I think my neighbors are a bit fucking bamboozled because I have blinds in my office that are permanently closed. I used to have plants in my office, but we soon discovered that that doesn't work because they need daylight. So I now don't. I painted the entire office black. I wear my noise cancelling headphones. I use an app called Endel, E-N-D-E-L. We'll chuck that up on the edit so you can see it. And I time block. And I think so if you've got a dark space, it doesn't have to be painting your office black, but if you can create a room at home, wherever you are, if you work from home, that is dark, you can't see out the window. So you can't see when the fucking bin man comes and watch what's going on. You noise cancelling headphones. Even if I'm listening to nothing, I have my headphones on. I will put them on all day, every day. I listen to Endel or a focus playlist. And then I do one task at a time through time blocking and micro days. Honestly, it's helped tremendously. And the beauty of micro days that we've not touched on is that one thing that used to really drive me spare in the corporate world was when I needed something from someone and I'll get it to you by end of day. It's right, cool. When I was an apprentice of mine, I'd be like, cool, what are you doing right now? And they could never give me an answer. I'm right, we'll do it now. If you don't know what you're doing, that's more important, then just do it now. So I think for you, you can start committing to end of day, which I know a lot of you do. I know I do, where it's I'll do that by the end of the day and I scribble it on a notepad and I hope that it gets done. Whereas if my end of day moves from 5 p.m. and we're in the first micro day, it means it's probably more 10:30. So it's got to be done by 10:30. You'll find you get a lot more done because you're in the habit of closing loops faster, which we'll talk about shortly. So I think that's very, very important. And if your workspace is designed for deep focus, create that environment that whatever focus looks like for you, it's created and curated in a way that you can control that external environment. You will make working 10 times easier if you can do that. If you can't control the external distractions, i.e. you don't have the privilege of owning your own house, you can't paint it black and do all these different things, you can control your internal environment. So again, noise cancelling headphones, the right focus playlist. For me, nicotine, caffeine, I close all the other apps. I turn my phone on do not disturb. And what I usually do with my phone if I'm working is I throw it into somewhere that's out of reach. I'll put it in another room because I don't need it. It's a distraction. And I know what I used to do is I would do a check-in and I would respond to a client and then I would tap my phone and I'd be like, oh, what notifications are there? And I would have a look. And then lo and behold, there would be something, and then I read the notification, and it's a WhatsApp, and then the next thing you know, I just quickly check Instagram. Now I check YouTube. Now I'm going to check podcasts. Now I'm going to check all these different notifications. And before I know it, I've spent 40 minutes when I was just replying to a WhatsApp, which I could have dealt with later on. Which brings me nicely to actually point number 3, which is to set boundaries on client communications. Basically, stop letting your clients run your day. I fucked this so bad as a coach, where I just said, yeah, message me anytime, whatever. I was guilty like the rest of coaches, I think, to 24/7 support available. You're not, and you shouldn't be. And you categorically shouldn't be marketing that. I think you need to set boundaries, hard boundaries with your clients. So I reply to messages between, say, 11 and 12 p.m. and then I'll do another block around 3 and 4 p.m. You're welcome to message me at any given point, but these are the times where I am online because you know where they fit in your time blocking. If it's not urgent, it waits to the next time block as well. So Matt, what do I do if I've worked 11 till 12 and a client comms block and I've not got through everything? The first step is open all your client messages. And the first step that we do at the Optimized Coach is triage. What is red, what is amber, and what is green? I.e. red is big problem that needs fixed now. Amber is in the middle. And green is, there really is almost no reply required here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deal with the reds and then the ambers and the greens, and if I don't get to the greens, that's absolutely fine. They move to the next comms block. And it's that straightforward, but until you have these rules in place for your communication, you're just never going to be free from the constant onslaught of clients messaging you 24/7, asking questions, and you're stuck in it and you spend all day reacting instead of actually growing. You will not have time for education. You will not have time for content. A lot of the time, the reason coaches don't have time for this stuff is because they're just fucking stuck messaging people back 24/7. So a pro tip for faster client communications though is if we've set those comms blocks that you're going to reply to messages, the way I like to do mine, by the way, is first thing in the morning, lunchtime, and when I'll close my laptop at night. That way I have a clear inbox most of the day. Now, when someone reaches out to get help, one of your clients, if you can teach your clients to ask better questions, You're going to be able to get through the client messages faster because a lot of the time is they don't know what they're asking, it's a waffle, it's unclear, and then you have to ask 45 follow-up questions to get to the actual crux of the issue. So I ask my clients to commit to something very similar to what I did. So when I worked in the office, I had apprentices, and those apprentices would come in and then they would tell me, Matt, I don't know how to X. And then I would say to them, what 3 things have you tried? There was a rule called 3 before me. And I think you can implement this with your clients like today, and it's the easiest thing in the world. Tell your clients you have 3 before me as a rule. They must have tried 3 attempted solutions to the problem before they come to you and ask for help. So what have they already tried? Like if you can get them to do that, they're going to give you a lot of context that you don't have to now go fishing for. So when a apprentice came to me and they asked a question, I'd be sitting looking at my desk and they would come from the side and I would just hold up 3 fingers. And if they didn't have the answer to their 3 things, they would turn around and they would walk off and they would go back and try 3 things because I'm teaching them to try and solve problems for themselves before I just spoon feed them everything. So if you can ask your clients to provide in the question, what is the actual issue that they're facing? What have they already tried? So that's the 3 before me rule. And what would a win look like for them? They can tell you, this is the problem I've got. These are the things I've tried and they haven't had the outcome I wanted. And this is the outcome that I'm wanting. It's going to save you asking all those follow-up questions. So you can just be like, okay, great. Love that you tried this. Here's what we're going to try next. And you can give them a solution. But most coaches waste so much time answering, or at least trying to answer really vague client questions. Get them to think first and you'll save yourself hours. And I think like the true art of coaching is not launching into coaching mode in your comms block so quickly and asking some more questions so you have enough data. Next up is to stop confusing self-care with avoidance. I have fairly firm views on self-care. Now listen, I'm a pro self-care. Like I've said to Chaz a couple of times today, for me, if I get to a point where I'm feeling a bit frazzled with work, I put myself spatty. I like a spatty. I'll go to a spa, chill out, turn my phone off, sit and read Elle magazine in my Hugh Hefner robe with various other middle-aged ladies, drink my herbal tea and have a massage. All of which seems to do tremendous good for my mental well-being, and I'm back. But I think this is where this avoidance thing comes in. Like I'm all for training and working hard, but if you're spending 3 hours a day in the gym while your business is stuck at like $4,000 a month, then you're probably avoiding the right work. Like what's in better condition right now, your body or your business? Like I think you can probably train, like rather than 3 hours a day, you could chop that right down to 90. You could stop lying to yourself and scrolling reels and saying it's research. You could prioritize work like you prioritize training. I honestly think that sentence, I could just have said that on this episode and you would have got it. Prioritize your work the way you prioritize your training. One of the reasons I fucking love fitness coaches as a market for me is you guys get the delayed gratification required to build something worthwhile. You go to the gym, you don't look any better today, you've go for years and you've got to do lots of really difficult shit to get a result which is probably mediocre for a long time. And then you've got to keep doing it and keep doing it and it's sore and it hurts and you're sore for days and it's difficult and there's toil involved. If you can treat your work like you treat your training, I think your business will fucking skyrocket. Because if your business doesn't grow, now does your freedom. And the irony is if you can maintain a decent rig with slightly less training, assuming you're a non-competitive athlete, because that's a completely different camp. I was never competitive. If I could go to the gym and I could train, I train 30 minutes a day. We'll do a whole episode on that. But I trained 60 minutes a day tops when I was a coach. And the rest of the time was spent on building the business because I understood on the longer time horizon, if I could build my business to something that was bigger and fundamentally sustain a higher level of freedom, I would have more choice to go to the gym for longer, which was absolutely true. I just now only choose to train for 30 minutes a day because it gives me everything I need. Final thought on this just now is that if we make hard work your identity, you will find this whole fucking thing much easier. Like it's not about hustle culture. I've said that already. It's about becoming the type of person who works hard because you're the sort of person who works hard. End of fucking story. Like I took some notes. There's working hard and there's doing it properly, and I think they're kind of one and the same. I was thinking about examples in my life, and I think the earliest one I can think of, like I was trying to think of where this came from in me. Like everything I do, I sweat the small stuff. Like I think that's very, very important. And I think for me, my granddad used to sit me down to do my homework, and he would have in his shirt pocket, he'd have a pencil rather. And that pencil was always fucking deadly. It was like the sharpest pencil you've ever seen in your life. Now, if I did my homework with my pencil, and it was slightly dull, the pencil wasn't completely sharp, he would literally erase the entire fucking thing and give me a sharp pencil and say, do it again. It taught me that your best work is the only option. Like, if you're going to do anything less than your best, just don't bother fucking doing it. I think that's really, really important. So I think doing your best work because you're the sort of person that does your best work is incredibly important. I think getting into the habit of understanding closing loops is incredibly important as well. So if I go back to me in the office, as the next example on the timeline is, I used to sit at my desk and I would, on a Friday, I knew I would have like hundreds of drawings that needed to go out to building control so that we could build things. And engineers would ask me for this, can you get this drawing pack? Can you get this drawing pack? Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And sooner than later, rather than later, some poor sod would come and ask one too many questions, right? I have already got work to here, which is, I know how you feel a lot of the time when you're self-employed, and I would fucking lose it. And I'd have to go for a walk because I couldn't work out what that behavior was. I was like, why do I just snap? And I used to literally put my noise cancelling headphones on and put a bit of paper on the back of my chair that said, fuck off, I'm busy. I got a lot of trouble for that because a client walked in and my chair was facing the door. When I reflect on it, it was because I had too many open loops. I had too many things I was trying to remember on paper, in my head, whatever, that were unfinished. And I think that's where overwhelm comes from in hard work is, you know you need to work hard, you know you probably need to work more efficiently. And in trying to do that, the mistake that coaches make is that they start loads of shit. I actually think the time blocking thing starts to negate that. You finish one thing and you work all the way through that task until it is done to the absolute fucking best of your ability, because that's the sort of person that you are. And then you move to the next one, but opening all these micro loops, that's why I've got close loop tattooed on my arm to remind me every day of every week, finish this task before moving on to the next one. So you're gonna work hard because you're the type of person who works hard. If you master the work ethic in the first place, everything else, content, sales, client retention, marketing, it all gets easier because you're just like the sort of person that is just so fucking efficient. And I know from clients have come to me and they have said, one of the main reasons they came to work with me over the next person was because they saw me as someone that's super disciplined. I think regimented was the word that James used, one of my long time clients, is that he saw me quite regimented and he thought if he put himself next to me, he could learn that regiment and learn that efficiency. And I genuinely believe that that is the case with me. It's like they are fundamentally part of my personality. They are who I am. And because they are who I am, I will get a lot more done than the next person. And ultimately, that's the guy that will grow faster. So these are all the things that allow you to scale teams as well, by the way. Like, we're not going to get into that in this episode, but like, you don't have the right or the privilege or the financial funds or the resources to hire a team in the first place. You have to do it all. So you better get fucking good at working hard, and you better get fucking good at being efficient with that hard work. Because if you don't, you'll be the coach that's stuck at 3K in 5 years' time, still going round in fucking circles. So here's what you need to do right now to cap out. I think you need to track your work real time, do a time study, 2 weeks, 15-minute increments, all fucking day. And I would do it from the minute you wake. Like, what happens when you wake? Do you spend the next 4 hours farting about with some mega morning routine, or do you just get straight to it? Like, I'm not here to tell you which one of those is right. I'm just here to tell you, if you review it all from wake to sleep for 2 weeks, that's a lot of time you're going to be looking at, and you're going to get a real close x-ray on what's going on. Beyond that, you should eliminate distractions. If you can't curate an external environment to remove distractions, then just curate an internal one. Like, you can always deal with your own biology and physiology. You want to work in focused blocks. You need time blocks. Like when we film, like we are now, we will film sometimes for an entire day, but as a minimum, we won't film for less than half a day. So if we don't have 4 or 5 hours, then we're not going to hit record. And we just record all the stuff. So I have all my notes, which I've taken at a previous time block I've done the notes, the research in a time block. I have reviewed the notes in a time block. I have refined the notes in a time block. I have discussed those notes with Chaz in a time block, and then we record in a time block. It's so much more efficient rather than just trying to do everything ad hoc. If you set boundaries with your clients, you will find you get a lot more done. Be harsh with what your communication blocks are. Be clear on what the result of a late check-in or turn up late for a PT session looks like as well. Like I was a bit of a Gestapo, and I think the type of people that worked with me really didn't mind it because they understood that it was because I'm running a fucking tight ship, not a shite tip. If you want to come in and be part of this, these are the fucking standards that we uphold as part of this community. And I've never had a problem with a coach in our business not upholding that because I'm clear at the get-go. I also think, finally, that if you cut the fluff and actually get to work, you will get a lot more done. I think a lot of the shit that people spend time on, people come to me and ask for help, and they'll be like, Matt, so I've spent the last 2 weeks building a website. I'm like, all right, what are you going to do with the website? I don't really know. What's it got on it? It's got like a how to work with me button. Like, what does that do? It takes me to a type farm. It's like, so you've just made it even more friction to someone getting to a type farm, and you spent 2 fucking weeks building it, and it looks like Stevie Wonder built it. It's easy to get distracted with stuff that's shiny object and not actually moving the needle forward. So I think one of the skills here is to get much better at identifying what your key priority tasks are, like not just stuff that's nice to have. I didn't have a website for the first 10 years of being a coach. 10 years. Why? Because I didn't fucking need one. Ultimately, the more you do of all this, the faster your business grows. And I realized it was a lot, and I realized I spoke very fast, but I mean, hopefully you get the point. I'm fired up right now, brothers. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. Have a good one. See you in the next one.